What are the typical career paths? I guess talk us through, like, if you wanted, as you said previously, if you want to become a project manager, you need to start here to go there. What are those typical sort of career paths?
Okay, so typically the clinical research coordinator role is the foundation. And it's the foundation if you want to be a clinical research associate, which is the auditor, the monitor that actually travels to multiple sites. They may have 10 or 15 doctors that they manage, and 2 to 3 protocols that they manage. And so they would have to travel every 4 to 6 weeks. They're a road warrior, as you say. They're on the road traveling 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 days per week. So if you want to be a CRA, the CRC role is a good progression. So you want to start at the CRC and then work your way to be a CRA. And I would say, when you have your monitoring visits, express your need or express your desire. If you're a study coordinator, express your desire to be a CRA with the CRAs that you interact with, because a lot of times they get notification of openings, or we need additional members on the team, and they will reach out. The companies will reach out to the CRAs on their team and say, do you know of anyone that would make a good CRA or who would want to be a CRA? So if you're a study coordinator and you've already said, hey, keep me in mind in case you have any openings, that's a good pathway there. Now, if you're in the CRA position, you can be either a lead CRA from there, which is like the lead CRA on the team. So it's one person that's probably the most experienced with the study, and they oversee the other CRAs. And if there's a question from the CRAs in the field, they'll send it to the lead CRA. Sometimes that lead CRA has to monitor too, but other times they just are in the office and they're a lead CRA and they do all of the CRA management. They review trip reports. They're also in meetings with sponsors and learning about the study deliverables and disseminating it to the CRA team. So that's another. If you want to go from CRA, you can go to lead CRA, or you can go from CRA to CTM, which is clinical trial manager. And the clinical trial manager is responsible for the clinical deliverables. The study is on the clinical trial manager's shoulders for delivering on time, recruitment on time, staying within budget, making sure we have the appropriate resources, making sure we have the appropriate sites. So the study as a whole rests with the clinical trial manager. So if you're okay with that level of pressure, if you would say, because there's a lot of eyes on you because you are the one that has to deliver the study, then that could be a really good career progression from CRA. You can go to CTM. And then now I will say, from each company differs. Sometimes a clinical trial manager and a clinical project manager, those names are used interchangeably. So sometimes you have to ask, if you see an opening for a clinical project manager, if you ask, are you in charge of the clinical deliverables on the study? And if they say yes, then you are technically a clinical trial manager, and you're going to be doing the day-to-day activities to ensure the study stays on track. But other companies, they mention clinical project managers, and they are not involved in the day-to-day activities for clinical deliverables. They're more client-facing as a clinical project manager. And so that means if there's a sponsor like a Merck or a Pfizer, that clinical project manager is working hand in hand in lots of meetings with the sponsor, looking at maybe a portfolio of drugs, a portfolio of studies. They're not focused on one study like a clinical trial manager would be. So there's a slight distinction, but the natural progression from a CTM is to be a CPM, which would be like on the portfolio level and more working with the sponsor hand in hand on how we're going to roll out this study or this study drug across many studies, across, it's like a bigger platform than just one particular study. So that's those are kind of the career progressions and just the differences between the various roles. So that's why I say you want to see where you want to be.
Yeah.
So you can work up there. And there's another role that I didn't mention. It's called clinical trial associate or assistant. It's a CTA. And those CTAs work very closely with the CTMs, the clinical trial managers. They're like their right hand. So like for meeting minutes and meeting agendas and, follow up with the vendors, there's a CTA that works very closely with the CTM. That could be another career progression from a CTA position to a CTM. So you didn't have to come up through the CRA channel. You can go through from a CTA to a CTM and then a project manager. So there's different ways. You just have to really understand which would you enjoy, so you can make sure you don't spend time, because it does take time. You can't fast track yourself from CRA to CTM in 2 years. Like that's not gonna, it's highly unlikely. Maybe at a small company, you may be able to come right in as a clinical trial manager if you have other relatable experience, but it's a nice progression. You're gonna need some time, some skin in the game. So you have to make sure you're going the right way before you spend the time going through the channel.